welcome everybody. So I'm Sergeant First Class Hull. I'm a first sergeant with Delta Company 100 Battalion, master fitness trainer, and I've been doing personal training for about 8 years with my own company. So very happy to kind of work and help answer questions and help introduce performance-oriented movements, right, and also help alleviate injury and just help everybody get stronger overall. So today we're going to be going over a horizontal and a vertical press. So we see essentially overhead pressing with a dumbbell, barbell, whatever it may be, and horizontal pressing, which is going to be like our bench press, or it appears in the form of the push-up, right? And the Army is all about push-ups with this, right? So we're going to try to unlock these a bit too. If you have pretty decent proficiency on it, we want to clean up specific areas and get more positive performance and potential out of that. So we're going to start today. And I apologize too, we do have limitations on some of the space here. We're going to go through shoulder internal and external rotations just to identify where we may have sticking points in going overhead with the shoulder. Now before we start with that, does anybody have any shoulder injuries or concerns? Limited. Okay.
But I usually don't have too many issues.
Okay. Any actual surgeries that were done? Or okay. So we're going to try to, if there's no actual repair work, we're going to try to lock this thing down so we can alleviate any future shoulder injuries. That's what's going to be the goal for this. So what we're going to go through, everyone's going to grab some space we can use between the two power racks on the mirror or on the opposite side wall as well. We're going to start off with your body to the side of the wall. I'm going to get relatively about a foot to just under a foot off the wall. I'm going to do my inside hand facing the wall, palm pressed. I want to splay out my fingertips as much as possible. I want to pretend that my fingertips had paint on it. So I'm going to try to think about drawing a large brush stroke in a circle up and over. All right. My body position is going to be feet underneath my hips, toes forward, a little bit more narrow stance. I want to squeeze into my glutes, fully extending my legs. All right. And then I want to anchor my rib cage to my pelvis. A lot of the times too, if we are going overhead or I hit any kind of a limitation, I have a tendency to possibly let my shoulders hike or arch my back. We're trying to fight to maintain as stable, locked in body position as possible when going overhead, all right, and through that range of motion. If you're hitting a sticking point that you can't quite work your way out of, that's fine. If you need to bend the elbow or break down a little bit, by all means do so to allow it to pass through. But just think, try to fight to maintain as much position as possible through that range of motion. So we're going to do 5 shoulder circles going from the front to the rear over, all right? And as you go through, try to avoid turning your body as much as possible. Try to really focus on the range of motion through the shoulder, right? So we can stack up on this wall here in between, just getting yourself some space. 5 starting front to rear. All right, you're going to anchor your body, feet about hip width apart. Really think about gas pedal. I want to push my toes into the ground. I'm squeezing my glutes, and I want to draw my rib cage through my pelvis like I'm doing a crunch. Good. If you hit a sticking point where you're feeling like there's a break in position, think about exhaling through the sticking point and squeezing your glutes. I want to try to anchor that low body to keep my shoulders or my back from arching. Nice work, right? You're just kind of mentally envisioning, I'm painting that circular brush stroke. Think splaying out the fingertips as well. All right, when you hit those 5 reps, you're going to go ahead and switch sides. We do the same thing. Front to back shoulder rotations, opposite arm. Lock in that low body. Big circular reach. These movements are a good preparation movement to do prior to any type of upper body work. You can do it periodically throughout the day. If you are stuck behind a desk, this is really good at kind of undoing any type of shoulder tension that you can get from being rounded forward, seated, typing away. Just grabbing some wall space. Good. Try to preserve that position as much as possible, avoiding arching on the back. Exhale in the sticking point. Squeeze your glutes. Draw your toes into the ground in the sticking point. Nice. Nice, right? Anybody notice that one side was a little bit less stickier than the other, right? Was that their non-dominant side or their dominant side?
Dominant side was less sticky. It was more sticky, actually.
Right. So you can see too, right? Not everyone's going to be created equal with that. Based off of limitations, strength imbalances, it happens. When we're doing these movements, I'm always, though, trying to create as much balance as possible. I'll get into a little bit of where one area where we don't need balance. That's going to be anterior to posterior going forward from here. Okay, so next up, priming our shoulders. Now we're going to go into how we want to think about setting up push-up positions, right? So we're going to do what's called creating external torque or torque into the ground or the item that we're interacting with. All right, so we're gonna practice 5 reps of a good old-fashioned front leaning rest position push-up. All right, so Staff Sergeant Morris is going to align his hands into the ground, relatively shoulder width apart. He wants to try to lean before he even extends his legs. Lean his shoulder just over his wrists a bit to load that position. What he's going to do next is he's trying to envision that he can break the ground apart with his upper back. So he's not bending at the elbow. He is trying to splay the ground apart by rotating his hands to the outside and separating, right? As he does that, everybody sees how his back is actually flexing, right? And his shoulder blades draw together, right? You can even see his triceps start to turn on, all right? This locks his core into position. Once he's in position here, he's going to maintain that separation of the ground as he lowers himself to the ground and as he pushes at all points. This is effectively locking that shoulder and not letting it float. Has anybody done a push-up or a pressing movement before and felt weird in the shoulder? Maybe unintentionally, or it may have been there too, right? It's going to be lack of creating this external torque into the object or the ground. All right, so he's next going to extend his legs. All right. And we want to get into this old gymnastics adage of tight makes light. He's squeezing his glutes, fully extending his legs all the way through, so his body looks like a single unit from here. He's going to maintain this tension even as he's fatiguing, because this is going to allow him stability to push from. He's going to go ahead and execute his 5 push-ups. He's separating the ground apart, and he's pushing away, maintaining that glute squeeze, maintaining that full knee extension. 2, big push. 3, 4, 5. Fantastic. All right, so everyone's going to go ahead and execute 5 reps in a push-up. Give yourself some space. Think about that separation into the ground. If you're on a rubber mat and you see that puzzle break in between, you have more of an eye line where you can envision, right, kind of pulling the rubber matting across, right? You're going to tuck your chin a bit, and I want to focus my eyes directly into the ground. I don't want to look up because that's going to cause my back to arch, all right? Locking in. You're going to lower and push away. Just think, if you're getting to a sticking point, squeeze your glutes harder, spread the ground even more to push. But bring your hands in a little bit closer. I want you to try to let your elbows drape or push across your ribs. So kind of keep those elbows in. There you go. Nice. Good. We're going to work in a range of about 3 to 5 if it's giving you some challenge. All right. All right, how'd that feel? Pretty solid, right? When you do push-ups, are you normally that screwed into the ground? Good. What did you notice about the push-up, though, when you're really creating that tension into the ground? Correct. Right. So this is critical, right? So when we're actually doing the push-up, we don't want to go super wide, right? If you can remember, too, from the original APFT, or if you look at the combat-focused position of the ACFT, the push-up is controlling a non-compliant person, right, to push or pull, right? I'm going to create that push itself. I push, however, though, right, for functionality from within the chest position. If I'm going wide for the sake of shortening my range of motion, it doesn't really convey how I would do something functional. right? If you're gonna push a broke down Humvee for whatever reason with a crew, right, I'm not getting super wide because I can't get enough force into it. I'm always gonna push. If I'm in a fight, God forbid, right, if I'm gonna push somebody, I would never push super wide because I'm gonna miss them and end up hugging them. That's gonna be awkward, right? I wanna think about pinning the shoulders down, and for the most part too, right, this is that range in which I push. And everybody remembers too, right, in ACFT, what's the point of performance on how we set our hands up? Index finger on the inside edge of the shoulder, right? So that's already giving me the landmark on how I'm going to actually execute a functional pushing movement for a non-compliant person, essentially. So, and as you're doing that, like you said as well, right, you start to feel your tricep actually engage more, which is also critical for extension in a push or a punch. So functionality, we want to train functionally on how we want to actually perform that movement itself. But fantastic, right? You said, I actually feel stronger when I do that. Right, position. Like I said when we're starting off too, we're not necessarily teaching you 6 or 20 different exercise movements. We're teaching you the blueprints on how to move, and you apply that blueprint across whatever the task is that you need to do. Okay. So next up, we're going to go into incorporating our vertical press, and we're going to introduce it with a landmine press. So from here, you can use, if you're in a gym setting and you see any of these weird little fulcrum devices too with a cap on it, this is your landmine. It's designed for angled barbell training, and this was invented about 25 years ago to help shot putters with creating rotational power in the movement. We can also use this though to work a press if I have limitations overhead under weight. So to introduce this movement itself, I have my bar, placing it in the socket, all right? I want to think about trying to set this bar up on my palm as if I'm a waiter holding a tray up, all right? So from this position here, I can have my feet anchored just at the base of the deadlift rack, okay? I'm going to let my elbow drift off a bit. I want to keep that glute active, rib cage down, and my posture long and tall as if a string is pulling my head through my shoulders. I'm going to keep this bar in line with my shoulder here, almost bisecting like I were to cut it off, all right? Elbow is going to be tracing the line from my rib cage. So from here, squeezing into my glute, I'm starting off. I want to press with a little bit of a lean into it, come back down, and I'm keeping the barbell in this track. I don't want to let my shoulder hike up to initiate, nor do I want to have my elbow wing out. I'm trying to keep everything in line underneath. Always think scoop underneath the object. I'm going to knock out 5 reps, come back over, and 5 reps on the opposite side, keeping everything together. All right, so everyone's going to take a turn going through 5 reps at a time, and we want to ID if there's any challenges for anybody in the audience with any type of vertical pressing from the get-go. All right, so there we go. Bring your feet a little bit more narrow. Okay, so I want to get that full extension through the hip, extending the knee. Think about pushing your big toes into the ground, all right? You're gonna let this barbell come a little bit more off your chest. So I'm just gonna let that draw away from the chest, push it off a little bit more, and you will start to feel your tricep. Perfect, all right? Now, from this position too, think about trying to squeeze down that lat. So I'm going to roll my shoulder blades together, and you're gonna feel this muscle right up underneath the armpit turn on. Perfect, right? Think about trying to keep those areas loaded when you push and when you come back down again, okay? There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. All right, switching sides. Think about the same setup. Scooping up, palming that barbell, right, when you're ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice. How'd that feel? Any restriction? Feel pretty smooth? All right. Did it feel consistent too with being able to kind of still feel that? Fantastic, fantastic. All right. So whoever's next will jump in. All right. So bring your feet a little bit more narrow right there. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to lean just a bit, and I want to scoop underneath the barbell. So when I push off a little bit to start, I just want to feel that tricep load a bit. So I'm going to let that elbow drift away. Good. All right. When you're ready, you can hit that 5 reps. 1, 2, 3. Pause it for a second here. So you notice how there's a little bit of a reach. I want you to try to think about keeping the shoulders squared off a little bit more. 4, good. 5, solid. All right, when you start, you're gonna let this elbow come forward a bit more. Now do you feel more tricep? Good, right, so that's gonna be your starting position. 1, 2, 3. Think about squeezing your glutes, fully extending the knees. 4, and 5, good. Any restriction in the movement, right? Did you feel pretty solid with those cues too of that squeeze down? Good, so we're always trying to think too, it seems kind of exaggerated or strict. Strict position will allow for maximum tension, maximum support, maximum power into the movement, all right? Good, right? So think about kind of realign toes forward. I'm gonna let them kind of touch the edge of the metal, okay? Squeezing into the glute. Try to think about kind of pulling your head through your shoulder, and I'm gonna wind up a bit. You wanna reach for that tricep. So I'm scooping the elbow up underneath to preload everything. Should feel nice and tight like a spring. Perfect. And I'm gonna draw shoulder blades back right there. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. All right, switching sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. They feel pretty controlled, right? No sticking points too as you're doing the movement, right? Do you normally, when you're doing any kind of overhead pressing work, do you feel as much tension or as stability into the movement? Like really being aware of your back? Okay, so it's a consideration too, right? Kind of think about, you may not necessarily think of it, right? But I'm literally squeezing my glutes to position everything to wind up when I'm pressing too, even though it's not a low body movement itself. Okay, so next thing we're gonna go into, we're gonna use both squat racks over here too, just to get kind of repetitions in without having to wait. We're gonna set up for our full overhead press position. So a barbell overhead press can be challenging because I have a singular object and I'm trying to take it overhead, all right? There's a couple of ways we can substitute this, right? So I can use a landmine if I'm having restriction or I don't feel as stable overhead. A little bit of that angle kind of takes the complexity out of it, and I can gradually load up that movement until I do feel strong enough to move up a step, all right? So for our overhead press, what it's gonna look like, I have a little bit of clearance here. I'm gonna approach my barbell. I wanna set my barbell at a height relatively close to where my collarbone is, which then mimics where the base of my trap is, all right? So it's where I'm going to be racking the barbell. So it's essentially I create a muscle shelf on my body either to the front or the rear, depending on what the movement is. Anything lower or higher becomes more awkward because then I would have to tippy toe it into the rack, or I wouldn't want to squat because then I'm wasting energy just trying to get it out of the rack, which I want to save for actually execution of the movement itself, all right? When I secure my barbell, this is going to be another default grip that we can use for a variety of movements with a straight barbell, whether it be a back squat or even a deadlift and a bench press, or even a power clean. I'm going to take my thumb and I want to place it a thumb off the smooth, right? So a little bit of barbell anatomy. I have the center of the barbell. There's no knurling on it. And then the knurling portion is my grip, right? Spelled with a K. So I'm just going to align my thumbnail to the edge of the line where the knurling starts. And then I'm going to wrap my thumbs up underneath. I'm going to push it into the rack, and I want to wind up scooping my elbows forward, and I want to stack my wrist so it's sitting over my forearm. I can temporarily set it here, but I don't want to press from this position because right now my wrist is loaded weird, right? And this is going to create pain. I want to get everything stacked so my palm is directly over my forearm. Notice how my elbows drift forward, and I'm thinking about superhero chest. I want to present my chest up as I am flaring my back. From here, I'm going to move my head out of the way, and I'm just going to immediately press that bar overhead in a straight line. And when I come back down again, I move my head back so as not to hit my head with the bar. All right, once I'm done, I'm going to walk it forward, re-rack, as such. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up 2 stations, and we'll rotate the 3 of you through. If the barbell is situated a little bit lower, that's fine. I'd rather have it lower than higher if there's going to be any kind of height discrepancies, or if you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and adjust the weight from there. All right, so working 2 at a time. If for whatever reason the barbell is too heavy, we can substitute with dumbbells as well for this. So I have a 45-pound barbell. All right, I want to scoop my elbows up underneath. I'm going to try to get up underneath that, get close to it, and then walk it out. Good. So from here, double checking my foot position, feet will be just up underneath the hips, squeezing my glutes, pushing my toes down, taking a nice big belly breath. I'm going to dip my head back, and then I want to drive that barbell overhead. I'm going to go for 4 more reps. There we go. And keeping that glute squeeze and that superhero chest. I'm trying to bend that bar into an upside down letter U with my back. Good. All right, how'd that feel? Pretty stable, all right? Anything stand out to you where you were feeling unstable or you managed to correct it, if anywhere? Was it overhead? Anybody feel any kind of an arch in their back, or they felt like they could keep their ribs pretty well stacked over their hips?
No, I think that's how I actually was speaking about it. So
All right.
I
Good.
I normally am that person trying to do this,
We'll try to kind of arch, right?
trying to keep it like that, but I wasn't.
Good fix. So eye line will also help with that, right? So I'm always trying to stay neutral as if a string is pulling me in 2 opposite directions. So all I need to do is just kind of move my head. I want to avoid looking at the barbell though, because it's going to cause me to arch. So I'm just trying to move that object around. I want to move my head around the bar. I'm not trying to move the bar around my head, because then that's going to cause me to lose my balance, or I'm going to actually break from the position I want to try to maintain, right? Solid first effort here. Okay, what we're going to do next is we are going to, I guess we lost our third.
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. We're going to add a little bit of weight to this, all right? So if you feel comfortable, you want to bring this thing up a little bit higher? Okay, by all means too. All right, we're going to add a little bit of weight. If going up 20 pounds is too much, we can grab some 5s and work off of that.
That's when I usually feel the need to arch
Right.
as I get heavier.
What we want to try to do here is, right, we're just dissecting this movement, so we are keeping it smooth, but I want to stay under a weight where I'm going to feel like a breakdown, right? What you want to try to think about doing, if you're feeling that arch come on, think about squeezing into the glutes. And I want to draw the rib cage down like I'm doing a crunch, right? So think, kind of pin that down, take a belly breath, and work through the stick, all right? Much like how we did too with those arm circles, okay? So when you're ready, dialing in those cues, 5 reps. Then use your breath. Belly breathe to set up and brace if need be. Good. Start a little bit higher, so bring those elbows up and in. A little bit more up. Right there. You're going to feel this load. There we go. That's your neutral position. Perfect. Just think start under tension. All right, not bad. So with a little bit of weight on, right, we're feeling the challenge. How did that feel, though? Did you feel you navigated the challenge fairly well, too, right?
Okay, I did. Yeah, I did feel that need to arch a little bit, but then I tried to correct it.
Awesome.
I try to feel where the tension running.
Awesome, right? So kind of like when I was cueing you, when you first start off with the landmine, right? Kind of start under that load. So we're trying to think of our body like a spring. If you ever pushed on like a bed spring, right? You can feel that potential energy when it's loaded up and it's compressed. And when I release, that thing is going to take off. Same position I'm trying to envision with my body. When we were initiating that landmine press, right? What happened when you were too low? It feels like you're stuck in a hole you can't quite dig yourself out of. If I initiate by loading up my back, my chest presents, so I feel that pectoral load, and then I draw that elbow forward a bit. Now I load with my tricep. I'm under potential energy, so I'm in a better position from which to press. Same thing goes right when I did a little bit of a cue. If I start too low, I'm kind of in a broken position. I want to grab that bar, break it in half, and notice now how my posture improves. If I start under good posture, it'll be much smoother for me to maintain that when I am pressing, right? So always think, start and stop in a good position from which to go. All right, what we're gonna do next, now we're gonna roll into our horizontal presses. Any questions though on vertical presses? All right, there's a variety of ways, like I said, you could do these things. You can work with bars. If you have any type of shoulder restriction, you can work with dumbbells. Dumbbells allow for more control because I don't have that stability of a singular object, right? So now both shoulders are having to control that object. When I'm creating external torque, right, I can actually use one side of my body which may not be as strong, and it assists the weaker side of my body. So that sensation of, hey, break the bar in half. If my dominant side can overpower my weaker side, that helps both of them move through, right? It's almost like guiding somebody through a dark room. You're just allowing that non-dominant side to work through. However, due to the restrictions overhead, I can't pass the bar through my body, so that's where sometimes, right, dumbbells can assist with that, or using the landmine, where I can kind of reposition my body where one shoulder may be restricted for going overhead. So something we can get into in the future too, but different considerations for training that. So next up, what we're gonna do, we're gonna use this for our next block of instruction. We're gonna go into our horizontal press under load, and we're gonna do this in the form of a floor press. All right, and you can actually leave this one set up here too, because we're a little bit pressed for time, and we'll break it down after. So I would assume too, everyone's had experience with doing a bench press or some type of dumbbell bench press. Has anybody done a floor press before? Off the floor, pressing.
When you sit down.
You'd be lying against the floor. Instead of using a bench, you are actually on the floor.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the differences between the two, right? Now, if I'm in an area too that doesn't have bench presses, right, logistically, I can use the floor. The floor is actually a really good teaching mechanic for understanding shoulder position and control when pressing. Too often when I'm on a bench, there may be a little bit too much room, which allows my shoulders to float around. So even though I may be pressing, I'm not getting as beneficial a movement activation because of that float, and I might put myself at risk of injury. So what we're gonna do first, we're gonna use a dowel, and we're gonna set up against the ground, right? So that same sensation of that torque, really trying to break the object, is gonna be critical here. So when you do it, I'm gonna face this way just so you can see. I'm assuming the camera's pretty much good to go. Actually, let me face this way. All right, so with my floor press, I'm gonna get a relatively 90 to a little bit less than 90-degree knee bend. I wanna plant my feet into the ground. I'm pushing and I'm squeezing my glutes. So essentially what this is doing is it's stabilizing my hip. So as I'm lowering the weight, I'm keeping my body from rocking side to side, right? You may have found yourself too with heavier weight. Have you ever rocked side to side when doing a bench before, right? Maybe unintentionally, right? So I need to lock myself in. I'm gonna grab right? In that relatively shoulder width apart position, wrapping thumbs around. And I want to think about bending this dowel rod, not with my elbows. I'm bending it with my upper back. So notice as I do that, my elbows start to rotate inward a bit, and you see my back wind up. Now, this does look like an arch. However, I'm drawing my hips in and I'm locking this. So I'm not letting my back completely go. I'm just creating just enough of an arch to wind up to receive the weighted load, right? My shoulder blades pull up underneath me, and now using the ground, right, I'm getting feedback. So when I press, I want to use my entire body to think about pressing the earth away from the object, right? Sounds weird, but that's going to help with coordination, especially as it gets heavier. All right, as I lower, I want to keep both elbows simultaneously touching the ground, and I send it back out again. So I look kind of like somebody pushing down into a spring. I'm loading up, and then I release, keeping tension. Load up, and release. Load up, and release, all right? So anybody notice too, right, as this is pretty light, it's just wood, but see how much of an emphasis I'm putting into this. I'm trying to treat this like it's a heavy load. And this helps with warm-ups, all right? So essentially, I'm patterning my nervous system to prepare for load and position, even with a light weight. And then when I move to a heavier weight, my body's already loaded and primed for that. So I want to think about lift light weights like heavy weights so I can lift heavy weights like light weights. Is that kind of consideration, all right? So we're going to go through, we're going to do 5 reps of a floor press with our dowel. Try to think, snap this thing in half, okay? All right, so we're going to flatten. So before you initiate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check your position. I'm going to try to rock you back and forth with the dowel. Can you stabilize yourself with your hips, through your feet, and your shoulders into the ground? Give me more of a bend with your back. Try to draw those shoulder blades in. Perfect, all right? Fully extend your elbows, and I want you to try to flatten out your knuckles like you're throwing a punch. So I want to try to stack my palm over my forearm. There we go, right? Give me more of a bend to the dowel. All right, I'm going to try to rock back and forth. Then use your whole body to hold it from rocking by flattening it into the ground. You feel that connection now, right? Perfect. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to knock out 5 presses. I'm going to lower, keeping that connection. Both elbows touch simultaneously, and I want to explode off, pushing away. 1, 2, 3, good. 4, 5, excellent. All right. When you've normally done horizontal pressing, all right, do you see any difference between how we kind of initiated that movement there?
I do like the way your arms have locked out right there so I can stable. So I have times when the bar is heavier than, I don't know what my bar is heavier than this, but it seems like it. When I'm feeling like.
It may feel like it's drifting around, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to think wind up, right? And if you may have either known somebody or maybe yourself too, when you're doing pressing work horizontally, maybe you get wrist pain. It's because I'm not creating enough tension into the object. So now my wrist will float like my shoulder. I want to wind up into this thing like a screwdriver. I'm punching in and winding up, and I'm using that posterior, right, my back to anchor whatever it is I'm doing through that movement. If I'm loose though, then it's going to have issues, okay? So I'm going to have you go through. All right, we're going to get situated. All right, and then I'm going to test your stability too. Go ahead and tuck your chin just a bit. Think, use your body to push the earth away from the dowel. I'm going to test how well you're stable. Tie in a little bit more. Perfect. Okay, we're going to do our 5 reps. Bringing it down. Elbows contact simultaneously and send it away. Good. Snap that dowel in half with your back. Awesome. 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. How'd that feel? Is that a little bit more stable than you're kind of used to doing, right? What kind of was the takeaway? What kind of helped you with that stability? The breaking or the bending of that sensation?
Have a dead man's grip.
All right. So that's a that says it all too, right? So when benching anything that sounds like dead man's, it's probably not good or safe, right? So what happens is, right, that got into this component from certain bodybuilders where in order to prevent excessive fatigue in the forearm so they could do more reps for a burnout set, they would remove using their thumb, right? That can work for light weights. When we're working for strength, though, I need to use my thumb for maximum grip. The most dangerous weightlifting exercise is going to be the bench press because of the weight used and the proximity to your head and neck. If I am dead man's grip, right, I'm not using my thumb, now the chances of this coming out of my hand exponentially go up, and I do not want to drop any weight on my head or neck, bar none, right? That's enough said. So utilize that thumb, break that object in half, all right? So we're going to go up next. We're going to use our bar. No change essentially from the setup. All right, thumb off the smooth, I grab it, I break it apart, I descend, and then pushing away. So now I have a little bit more weight so I can really get more feedback to try to move this weight as explosively as I can, but as stably as I can simultaneously, okay? So I'm gonna help you unrack it. So you're gonna go ahead and get situated first. I will walk it out of the rack and then hand it to you. So in the event you don't have longer safety arms, you could use a partner to help essentially control that bar for you in the form of a deadlift. Okay, so we're gonna set up. Same position, right? I wanna push the earth away from the bar with the body. Stack the wrists a little bit more, all right? Break that bar into an upside down U with your upper back. 5 reps when you're ready. Control it, so think like a spring. I'm loading it, let it come down and explode off. There we go, 2. Control it, not too slow, not too fast, push, 3. 4. 5, much better, good job. All right, what'd you notice? It's just a control thing, right? So what'd you notice between rep 1 and 2 to 4 and 5?
So when I did rep 1 and 2 and 4 and 5, so the first ones, that's when I felt I could feel the difference that one elbow was actually touching and one elbow wasn't. So then I wanted to try to make sure they actually hit at the same point. So I took my time a little bit more, made sure that I actually kept the tension completely.
Correct, right? So actually what happens when you thought it was one side shorter, you just weren't creating enough external torque into the bar. When you do so, it aligns everything, and then, right, by 4 and 5, everything was smooth, right? So just think, right, break the bar is what I'm trying to emphasize. All right. All right, sitting up our feet. All right. Good. So same cue, right? I'm going to kind of double check your position, locking in the wrist. I'm going to try to roll you back and forth. There we go. Good. Tie into the ground. Good. Break that bar and push it to the ceiling. Good. 2. 3. 4. 5. Nice. All right, what felt different from how you normally execute benches, right? You can feel how much more loaded up. Could you feel like you could put more speed on the bar by that wind up? Good, right? So in order to build power and speed, which a lot of the times too, right, when we're doing our reverse ball toss in the ACFT, I have to wind up to be explosive, right? Especially if I'm in a fight for my life, whatever it may be, too, right? If I'm pushing a non-compliant person, I'm not just doing this thing, right? I'm trying to send that out. So I need to wind up and then explosively push out without losing position. I can mimic that here by loading that barbell, breaking it in half, and then I'm sending it out, and I'm not letting my body break as I'm sending it out, all right? And the remaining time, what we're gonna do, we're gonna challenge this position by loading up some weight. So we're gonna do 10 at a time. We wanna try to get to a weight where we can work position, but we're not in danger of breaking down because we don't wanna default to poor technique. All right. When you're ready. So we got 65 pounds. All right. One thing to add to this, if for whatever reason it starts to feel heavy or sticky, I want you to set up with a big belly breath at the top before you descend. So it's like you're bracing for that movement and getting ready for it. Try to avoid rushing yourself if you're not ready for the rep, okay? All right, good setup. Big belly breath when you're ready. Nice, good, 1. Break that bar, push it to space. 2. 3. 4. 5, excellent. Right on, right. So you can tell you put on 20 more pounds, but your elbows, your arms aren't shorter than each other, right? So, so the tension was there. Did it feel consistent all the way through?
Yes.
All right. Could you also get the sensation of like drawing your hips and your feet into the ground, and it's like you're pushing the earth away from the bar? Fantastic.
I felt like I was definitely ready for those.
Awesome, awesome. All right, would you like to add a little bit more weight than this to challenge it? Okay, good. What do you want to put on? 25s as well? Okay. So we'll leave the 10s on. We're going to add on our 25s. All right, getting situated right. Wind up for it. Awesome. Locking it in. Belly breath. Break this in half. Control and power. Yes, good. 1. 2. 3. Break that bar with your back. 4. And 5. Good. All right, how'd that feel? Right. What's a major takeaway you think that came from that with adding a little bit more tension, or any sensations that stood out to you?
My wrist feels better. Also, I don't know why I always do this, but whenever I do the bench press, I want to lift my head up, and I didn't want to lift it as much as I did before.
Right. So a lot of it shows, right, when we're pressing, you had a tendency to protract your body forward, right? This is not actually stable, because now I'm breaking from being able to receive weight. With that sensation of, right, push the earth away, my spine becomes neutral and I'm in a much more stable position in which to press, right? But it's fantastic. So I'm asking for the feedback, right? Like no wrist pain, because I'm actually using my grip to wind that up. A good analogy on winding up, right, is like, you ever had like when you're a kid too, right, like towel fights with people? And what's really, you see somebody really wind up with a towel, right? That's gonna suck when you get hit with that stuff too. I'm essentially creating that wind up, that power to send that object out. So anytime you're interacting with the environment, a weighted load, get situated, all right? What's your MOS?
12 November.
Engineer, all right, what's your MOS? Right, working with combo equipment, right? Big, heavy, weird stuff, right? Sometimes it may be a 2-soldier lift, whatever it may be too, right? But I can still get a good solid base. I'm grabbing this thing and I'm picking it up. If I'm reaching over in a compromised position, that's normally where injury is going to happen, right? You could just as soon pull your back picking up a pillowcase versus getting in a good solid hinge position, right, or reposition the shoulder. More often than not, you're going to hear somebody say, oh, I tweaked something, when they're reaching out into a cupboard, right, because they're just asleep at the wheel essentially when they're grabbing something. Good movement should always be free flowing. You're not necessarily having to brace for like a punch if you're going to get a water glass out of the cupboard, right, but just think good positioning. All right, so fantastic. Any questions on what we covered today? All right, good. So hopefully you got an introduction to different weightlifting movements, enhancing the technique. It's kind of a quick class too, but we want to get more of these things going out and then just get that out to your fellow soldiers. So spread the word. Thank you for joining us. All right.